Hi, welcome to Biz Today. I'm Nazareen Ebrahim. So this is your weekly edition of the show. Remember, we always have a successful entrepreneur and an expert in the studio. Today, however, is slightly different. We've got an expert in the studio to talk about a topic that's a rather interesting one. And I think a lot of businesses have heard the term, but sometimes don't know how to approach it. We're going to be talking grant funding today. And we've got an expert in the studio, Rishad Ahmed. He's CEO and founder of Incentive SA. They've been helping businesses for over 10 years in accessing grant funds and also understanding the industry really well so that they could take large businesses and help them go even further. So let's chat with him and understand the industry a bit better. Rishad, welcome to Biz Today. It's lovely to have you in the studio.
Thank you very much for having me, Nazareen.
Okay, excellent. So we're today talking about business funding.
Yeah.
You know, I have to get this understanding correct, I think, in my mind, and I'm sure other entrepreneurs have a similar understanding as many small or large business owners.
Yeah.
So people often think of funding that they can access from a government entity or some entity, something that's generally not payable.
Yes.
Well, how do we understand business funding or
it's
grants,
an
government grants? What is
important question to define what it is. So business funding means simply money for business. So if you then break it down further, you have grant money or grant funding. Another word for funding is money, basically.
Yeah.
So you can get money from government grants, and you can get loans from government or from private sectors or private banks. So this is the basic separation, is that you have funding for businesses. So funding for a business comes through bank accounts, through income that they generate, but sometimes a business needs extra help. And government of South Africa, through the Department of Trade and Industry, has made available funds. Now that funds are available in different forms. One of them is grants. So the differentiation between government finance and government grants is a grant is money that's non-repayable. It's money that's given to you to help you with your business because you're a South African company and you're creating jobs in South Africa. So if you're creating jobs in South Africa, the government will give you money to purchase certain things to help your business expand and grow, such as machinery, equipment, and things like that. Whereas finance is government will give you money also because you're creating jobs on a finance basis. That means you repay it. And that's the two differentiating terms between the finance. So one's a loan and one's money given to you. The money that's given to you is a grant money. And the money that is loaned to you is finance.
So the finance part, if we look at the finance or the loan part that you have to repay, are these more favorable terms in which you can pay them? Is that why people may look at that as an option?
Yeah, that's a good question. Why go to a government finance institution instead of your local bank? So in some cases it's more favorable because they'll give you a longer time to pay. They'll give you a moratorium, which means that you don't have to make any payments for a certain period, like 1 year, and they give you
so it gives you a head start almost.
Yeah. And they give you a preferential interest rate. So you can get at prime minus 3%. So that's where finance from a government, and sometimes a commercial bank won't finance a project because they don't see the value in it. Whereas government might see that the jobs that are created, and that's under institutions like the IDC, the Industrial Development Corporation, and the NEF as well, National Empowerment Fund, who gives money on finance basis for projects that they believe in and that can create jobs and that are bankable. There must be a solid business plan behind it.
Bankable, you say?
Bankable business plan.
In this instance, I mean, a company now, when we'll come to this, you'll explain to us when a business is at the point at which it's applicable for them to apply for it. Finance or grant funding, as it were.
Yeah.
How would they need to, what could we say? If they're positioning themselves for grant funding, what else would they be able to access from the funder? So they're not simply getting a grant or finance. Are there other valuable inputs from the financier that would be applicable to the funder?
There is. They offer us things such as coaching services and business support services as well, depending on.
In addition to providing the finance or the grant.
Yes, it depends where you get your finance from, but that's one of the things that you could have as well. But if you're an established business and now you need money for expansion, you don't really need coaching because you already know what you're doing. What you might need is someone to advise you, and part of what they do is they do a due diligence to see that your understanding of the project is the same as what the industry standard is. So just to take a step back with government grants, to give you an overview of the grant process, you have grants from the South African government for businesses that meet certain requirements, and we'll go through the requirements.
Okay.
But what it means essentially is that government gives you money to buy equipment on a 50-50 basis. That means you put down 50% and the government will put down 50%. Now, the most important grants that we're going to talk about, it's a very large topic, and the DTI has over 28 grants available for various sectors. But to keep it specific and yet general to non-white owned companies, and that's where the government's push is towards the black empowerment. So if a company is 51% black owned, meaning historically disadvantaged individuals, you can access a program called BBSDP. It's a very long acronym.
BBSDP.
This is Black Business Supplier Development Program. That's what it stands for. The name doesn't actually represent what it is, but it's a program that allows you, if in any industry, you can access grants to purchase machinery. So what's very exciting about this program is that if you wanted machinery to the value of R1 million, the government will give you R500,000 towards that machine.
And you put down the other
And you
half.
put the other half. So so if you are expanding your business and now you're thinking, where am I going to get this money from? Yet you see the potential, you can approach your local bank. They might say you don't have the money, and if you can get half of the money from government for free, it's very exciting. So across all industries, and we've done from manufacturing to home catering to plumbers to construction companies, every single industry can apply on the BBSDP program. So that's the one that I'd like to focus a lot on and talk about as well. There are some grants available for very large companies as well, which it's called the 12I tax incentive. So if you're paying a lot of taxes, a grant is available to use the money that you're supposed to pay for tax and use that for an expansion.
12I tax.
The 12I tax incentive. So if your turnover is, if you're paying quite a lot of tax and your expansion plan is over 30 million rand, then you can access that fund. So we're going to keep it more towards the small, medium and large businesses in the discussion.
Yeah.
So that's the one. The BBSDP program is really interesting, and you can go to our website and read more about it as well. But that's the one I'd like to focus on, and then we'll talk more about the finance part as well.
Excellent. So your details are up on the screen, I know, and viewers will be able to go and visit the website,
Yes.
incentivesa.co.za,
That's right.
to be able to access more information.
Yeah.
I know you've worked with numerous businesses over the years,
Yes.
and you focused a lot on bigger businesses who who need to scale even further.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the viewers will have the question in their minds, what about small businesses, startup businesses? Can we address that briefly before we go
sure.
back into the discussion
Sure.
around big business?
Yes.
What do small businesses, what should they think around grant funding?
Well, the first important definition is what is small business? Because to us, the definition according to government policy is a business under 35 million rand. Now that is the small business that we target. When we talk about large businesses, we're talking generally a turnover of over 100 million rand.
Right.
So our target is to small businesses, but not to startups and entrepreneurs. Now, regarding your question, there are funds available through other programs, including CEDA, the Small Enterprise Development Agency. CEDA offers grant money and funding for startup businesses. So that's where you would approach that particular organization. Remember, we're not a government organization. We're a private organization that helps businesses for expansion. But if you're a startup company, you require finance and you require a government grant for things such as a business plan or brochures or business cards or software, you can approach CEDA. And if you don't, and if you need finance, you can approach CIFA, which is a Small Enterprise Finance Agency, and they provide loans to smaller enterprises or startup enterprises as well. So that's where you would access for entrepreneurs and startup businesses.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I think a lot of viewers will have the idea in their minds that we're small startups, or also wanting to know how we can scale in the future. But
Yes.
right now, how are we able to just to get a leg up?
Yeah.
The thing also though is a lot of times businesses want to understand, and I'm sure that large businesses already know this in applying for finance to grow their business. Do they get cash? This is the real question I think many people have on their minds when they win a grant or win finance, as it were, or score that. Do they get cash for their business, or is the government saying, I'm going to buy you whatever is necessary to grow your business?
Well, yes, if you're applying for grant funding is not a cash disbursement, it's to buy equipment. So capital expenditure such as a machine, such as things that you need in your business. Like if you're a manufacturing business, you need a new plant. So you'd need machinery, you need a forklift, you'd need other kind of facilities to make that happen. So that's where grant funding, you'd pay 50% in order to acquire the capital or the item, and the government will pay 50%. But if you're applying for finance, then finance is cash as well. But that cash is not money just given to you in a bank account to do whatever you'd like with to do with it. You need a plan and say, I need working capital in order to purchase raw materials, in order to buy a vehicle, in order to buy a building, and all of that is calculated in your business plan. But as any successful business entrepreneurs knows that the cash lying around is cash not being well spent. So you're always engaging that money to get the maximum benefit out of that money.
I think let's take an example now to explain the different, or rather not the different, but the route to accessing grant funding. So I'm a bakery, and I've got maybe a branch in every city in the country. And I obviously have identified a new location, and I need to also partner possibly with someone who's doing a new type of cake or muffin from somewhere else in the country, or bringing in something into the country. And I want to expand the business. You know, got all these different beautiful outlets that I actually sell to the public, and maybe I'm also producing my own range. So there's quite a few things going on there.
Yes,
maybe it's too many things going on.
No, it's fine. That's the best way I can show you how to access various options by you giving me a scenario.
I come to you, and what happens?
Yeah, so on a daily basis, that's what I have. I have companies who are doing interesting things, and especially in the Muslim community, I'm fascinated on a daily basis by the kind of quality of people that we have in the community, and it inspires me to realize that we are a very successful community, and we work very hard, and we achieve quite a lot. So across all colors, the entire color spectrum, we are very successful. So in a scenario of the bakery that you're talking about, you would need equipment. So the equipment that you'd need would be ovens, mixers, fridges, all that sort of thing in order to expand your business. So you can apply through the BBSTP if your company is relatively small. Now, small definition is 35 million rand and below. So that's pretty big. It's not exactly a tiny business.
Exactly.
So as at that particular point, you can apply for a grant for 50% back on your equipment. And many of our clients are in the bakery industry. So we have one client that just does the normal everyday loaf, and they do 21 million rand a year turnover, just providing the everyday loaf to the informal sector. So you have the spaza shops and places in the townships that they supply the bread to, and they've grown rapidly because one of the industries, especially bread, is a cash-based business. So you supply the bread, so it's COD and you get paid.
That's
so
right.
It's very successful. So the next step you would say is, well, I don't have my money for my contribution of the 50%. So government says, sure, we'll give you 50%, do the application. For the other 50%, you could go to someone like the IDC. And I've taken to them proposals for bakeries before, and they love it because it's cash-based business. So they will give you the finance to either finance at 50% or to provide the entire finance, because you're creating jobs in the process as part of your expansion thing. So those are the two things that you could use. You could work with the IDC, which is the Industrial Development Corporation, and there are other organizations as well. Anglo-American have a fund called Zimele Fund, and they provide jobs, provide finance as long as you're creating jobs. Then the NEF also has the same type of facilities. On the government grant side, it's generally the DTI. So it's important not to mix the terms. A lot of people think the IDC is the DTI and the DTI is the IDC. They're very different. One is finance, IDC, one is grant money, the DTI. So as your business wants to progress and get into other countries, you can get into a program called the EMIA. And I'm not going to tell you what it means, but it's an export marketing initiative. And this particular program allows you to go and exhibit your products in other countries. And the DTI have this thing called pavilions. And on a monthly basis, or every second month, they're in a different country in the world. So they will pay, if you apply in advance as a manufacturer and as a black-owned company, you're entitled to this fund as well. So it's a grant. They will give you 16,000 rand per person for flights, plus accommodation of roughly 2,000 rand a day, plus they'll pay for all the cost of transporting your goods that you want to exhibit in another country. So I know in September they're going to Moscow, they've been to Germany, they go to Saudi Arabia, to Dubai. So you can get all this money subsidized on behalf of the DTI who will pay for it.
How big does your company have to be to access that?
It doesn't have to be very big. So if you're under 35 million rand, then you're in that particular category, or if you're a little larger as well. So there's no specific requirement. So it can be very useful for promoting your bakery, for instance, if that's what you're running overseas. And if you're still under 35 million rand a year, you can access grants from SEDA. So you could get all your vehicles branded, so you could get, and they pay 80% of the cost of that. So you can get new vehicle wraps, you can get, you can even get a billboard put up as well, new brochures, new business cards, new menus, all that sort of thing. So you can really access it. And there's a grant called the MSEP program. The Manufacturing Competitiveness Enhancement Program, another very long acronym. The DTI loves very long acronyms.
Enhancement Program, that's a mouthful.
So what it is about increasing competitiveness in the manufacturing space.
Yeah.
That grant was abruptly closed last year in August, but there's rumors that it will reopen this month, in fact, and we're still waiting for news. But that one is specifically targeted to manufacturers. And it's very interesting because it has a much higher limit. So you can actually get equipment and your expansion plan, which includes a building, and if you wanted things that are specific to your services, like ISO, which is a standard, you have ISO 9000, and if you're in the baking business, you'd need things like HACCP, which is an international standard for safety and for food safety compliance. And the DTI will pay up to 80% of the cost of this. And that program is capped at 30 million rand. So on a 50-50 basis, you could really score quite considerably for your expansion plan. Having said that, a lot of people hear these numbers and they haven't even started. They know, I want to go after that program and get me my 30 million rand. It doesn't work like that. If you're legitimately going to be investing that much and expanding, makes sense. But a lot of people want to see, change the game around and see how they can fit into a grant to get free money. It's not the correct way. And as an advisor in the private industry, I always tell people, if you are busy on an expansion, we can help you. But it's not about using the system to get money out. That's not what it's about, because the government has a mandate as a taxpayer, and myself being a taxpayer, we want to make sure that our money is used to create more jobs. And that's another reason why they are focused on small to medium and large businesses. They create the most amount of jobs. They have struggled and got to a particular point where they have proven success in business. So in order to keep on sustaining them, government saying, we will help you to expand further because you've got a track record. So those jobs will be retained, the economy will grow, and the SME market or the SMME sector contributes a lot to the economy. So supporting them in every way is very important, and we want to make sure that we're behind the success of these business entrepreneurs.
So you talked about manufacturing, and that made me think about, I mean, the government has the National Development Plan in place, which outlines under entrepreneurial investment certain areas that are most important to the growth of the economy. What are those areas? Because of course the grants then are specifically engineered or tailored to servicing those particular industries. What are those, and what are the top industries that grants will be provided for? If that is, I mean, that's applicable.
That is a goal that's changing slightly due to this the Industrial Policy Action Plan. And they are focused on manufacturing, there's focus on a few key industries, but yet the programs like the BBSDP across all industries will remain. So entrepreneurs in all industries can apply. But specifically, they aren't the grants specifically tailored for a particular sector. But let me explain that as part of Rob Davies' announcement last week, is they're going to be implementing new grants that target specific sectors in automotive, in mining, in a few key sectors that are identified, manufacturing of course being one of them. Then there's a thing called a blue economy, but that doesn't really affect our everyday sort of business owners. But if you're a very large company in a specific sector and then you want to access grant funding, then you'd need to consult with us and see if your sector could apply for other forms of funding as well. But that's very sector specific. But generally speaking, the BBSDP, the MSEP for the manufacturing program, and programs offered by SEDA are for the general business community.
Would you find that, and how do I ask this, I'm wondering, is there's a difference between, I mean, companies are accessing grant funding at a certain stage. So I'm wondering now, maybe I should bring it back to the question is, at which point do you know you're ready to access grant funding?
At the point that you're about to expand, or at the point when you've got a new contract, or it's all about expansion. So you'd go to grant.
That's why you're accessing a grant, because you're expanding.
A business grant, yes, but a lot of people, and it's an important distinction, because some people have this idea that a grant is for a company that's battling, or for an individual, because the connotation behind it is someone who is looking for a pension handout.
That's right.
And it's the most successful companies that are applying for free money. It's not your everyday battlers, because they're so busy battling, they haven't even had the time to see what else is out there. So it's very important to note that grant funding is for successful businesses that are expanding, not for people that are, if you're going through a difficult time, you can also use the grant to benefit. There's no issue there, but it has to be for expansion, because the grant's always going to come back to purchasing of equipment. So if you're in a tough spot, you're not going to have the money to purchase or pay your 50% contribution, so it wouldn't make sense.
Rishad, I think for the benefit of our viewers also, is there a difference you found as a consultant and someone who's coached and mentored businesses over the years with accessing grants or finance? Is there a difference between product-based businesses and service-based businesses? And how would you see both of them scaling to access these grants?
It's almost the same, really. It depends on what you're going to purchase, and if you want finance, or if you're a services company or an IT company, you provide. As last night we were at the Minara Chamber of Commerce, and we had one of the guests there who has an IT company, and they host clients' applications and things like that. So they'd be able to apply for grant funding and finance. So both of them would be able to. Then you talk about goods, it depends on what type of goods. So if you're producing goods like a bread company, you'd need machinery and equipment to do that. If you were a cash and carry, then it wouldn't really. So the retail sector, if you want to narrow it down, wouldn't benefit so much on the BBSTP program,
right,
per se, because you'd need to purchase equipment, and the most important thing that the retailer does. Now it depends which retail division they're in. If you're a clothes retailer, then your business would involve clothing hanger space, and then a place for you to sell. But if you're a food retailer, it's a different story. You'd need equipment, so you'd be able to benefit from ovens, fryers, grillers, coffee machines,
sure,
your point of sale systems, which get very expensive. All of that are legitimate items that you can claim on from the DTI.
So I've applied for the grant now, or finance, and I'm successful. What is my further engagement with these funders? I know we talked about it a little bit in our conversation previously. But what other conditions, or how else am I then providing value? I mean, the government's giving me a hand in order to scale.
Yeah.
I then have certain responsibilities, maybe?
Definitely. I mean,
What
you're
are
going to
those?
be accessing government money, you're accessing taxpayer money, so you have a duty to the general public in South Africa that pay
To
their
make your
taxes.
business work, obviously.
Yes, that's definitely one, and
Yeah.
then to be, reputable in running your business. Now, talking about reputation, one of the reasons why Incentives SA came into existence was because we found a lot of people talking about accessing government grants with no knowledge whatsoever, and then charging people exorbitant
Huge
fees
amount
with the
of money.
promise of getting them free money. And of course, everybody gets very excited when they say for free, and then you have these opportunists who go out saying, well, give us 10 grand, we'll get you money for free. I'm not saying all of them are dishonest, but the large majority are. So our business came about because we saw a gap in providing an honest and reputable service. So we charge no upfront fees whatsoever, and we spend many hours providing free consulting services, because the industry is so badly run. And with the group of very large companies, including SASFIN and a few other organizations, formed the Incentives Consultants Association, which is a body. We weren't personally responsible for forming it, but we are part of this organization,
Yeah.
which sets a standard for how you deal with people in the incentives industry and interacting with government institutions as well. So using the right type of people, and you can apply directly as well, the DTI, the Small Business Development Unit, you can apply directly as well. But using the right kind of people to get you the right kind of information is very important.
I think to wrap up this very interesting conversation, I'm sure there is much more you can advise on in terms of the various types of grants available or types of finance available to South African entrepreneurs. But what would you say to entrepreneurs in general about thinking about funding in the South African context and accessing that and being responsible about it? What would you say to them?
Well, I think first of all, work harder as you are working hard, and continue to be successful in what you're doing. And prepare yourself, make sure you pay your taxes, because when you pay your taxes, you have a tax clearance certificate, which means your financial statements are healthy, and having all this paperwork in order is critical. And entrepreneurs are so busy trying to run their business, they don't take care of the paperwork. And now, in order to access grants and finance, you need to have a business plan, you need to have your financial statements, you need to have a tax clearance certificate. So those are crucial things. So make sure that you bank correctly, that you put in, we have this perception of putting money on one side and not the other. Put all your money into the account, pay your taxes, have a healthy looking company, because one day the idea is for you to sell it off or to move on to a business. It's very easy to sell. But if everything's been run very badly, you can't. So prepare yourself by growing and then getting to a point where you want to expand, and then get in touch with someone like us as a consultants to give you advice on how to go about either accessing funding or grants going forward.
Wonderful. Rishad, it was invaluable having you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful to be on the show.
Excellent. So that was Rishad Ahmed, CEO and founder of Incentive SA, talking to us about business funding. I mean, those come in various forms. So you get grants, so you get finance. One of them is not payable and the other is obviously payable with very favorable terms. The details are up on the screen. Please send them any information or questions you have about accessing a certain type of funding from the government, and let your business grow. If you have any questions, find us on Facebook and Twitter. We're Biz Today, and we'll certainly pass on those questions for you. Until next week, goodbye.